All right, guys. Good morning. Happy Monday. It's Good Stuff, April 6th.
The hell day is it?
Something. It's still March 3rd, 307th, something like that. Well, first off, how's everyone doing? Everyone's slamming some different forms of caffeine this morning, I see.
I just did that little shake 'em up coffee thing, whatever that is. That was my workout and a coffee at once.
This is TJ's hack. It's spinach and Crystal Light.
Ugh, that sounds disgusting.
Right. It's actually really freaking good.
What does that do for you? Other
You
than
consume all the spinach.
yeah, that might have been like 4 bags of spinach.
I put water in it too.
I had a ton of spinach on my pizza last night, so I'm gonna let that be my
That'll carry
Good
over for the
nutrition.
rest of the week.
for the rest of the week, at least maybe a month. Yeah,
Yep.
for green stuff.
Well, lots to unload from this past week, year, whatever it is. So last week's big thing was everyone's trying to get their application in for the PPP. And it seems like those are kind of just trickling in, whether or not those applications were actually reviewed yet. What the statuses of those applications are, it's still pretty much unknown. It seems like it's based on a per bank basis. So maybe we just leave that for now, and we kind of just discuss, the next step. I know a lot of owners are trying to figure out, what the next step is, if they have funding, when is it going to come and what they do with it, or worst case scenario, their loan didn't come through, and now what's the next step? Nick, you guys, KCAC? I keep screwing that up. Man, you got to stop.
Kansas Athletic Club.
Kansas Athletic Club. You guys operate very well, and I know you guys are still going through the same process of putting through the applications and the loans and whatnot, and going virtual. Where are you guys with this?
Yeah, so Dan's got a great analogy that he's thrown out there several times with regards to this kind of being this whole crisis kind of being a bit of a hairpin turn, right? And so if you haven't maybe heard that analogy, Dan can, I think, always reference back to it. I don't know if you want to do that now or not, but
Yeah, I mean, just if you've ever been go-kart racing or even taken a hard turn on a mountain road, when you're taking that turn, there's like 3 phases. There's a braking phase where you got to slow down for the turn, like prepare for the turn. There's the actual turn itself and how you hit that turn and to which angle and speed matters. And then there's getting out of the turn. And that's when you're racing, that's the most important part. You want to get to the acceleration out of the turn as fast as you can. So you set up the entire turn to accelerate. And I think that's a super good analogy for what we're doing right now.
Yeah. And so in that lens, we're trying to look forward to what that sprint out of the turn looks like, right? So there's several kind of concepts that we're rolling with here. We don't have any assumptions that we're absolutely going to get funding, although we've submitted our applications. They're being currently review approved or whatever by the SBA. But if we have funding, we've got some different scenarios lined up for what that looks like. If we don't get funding, we've got some different scenarios that are lined up. So it's basically just like, what is the forethought? Like, what are you seeing on the horizon for the sprint coming out of the turn? And then laying out the different components of that. If we get funding, then we'll likely have the staff resources for things like full blown on our nutrition program, continuing to operate with our digital services, and opening our doors back up. If we don't get funding, then maybe that looks a little bit different. Maybe we got to dial back resources in some areas. Maybe we can't continue digital in its full capacity that we're doing now. So 2 completely different scenarios depending on funding or not. Does that answer the question?
No. That's the tough part about this is there's so many different options and you don't know what you're working with yet.
Right.
So then kind of to follow up on that, how do you evaluate it knowing that there are possibly, 6 or 7 different plays here? Do you kind of go with what you know right now conservatively? Do you bank on having the funding at some point in the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, literally in my mind, I've just got those like funding versus non-funding are kind of the roadmaps that I have mapped out in my head. If we have funding, then maybe I have three different options if we've got funding, because what, you just mentioned like all the different variables. One of them is going to, I strongly believe that they're not going to say quarantine lifted, everyone can just go back to watching movies in a crowded movie theater and let's break out the parades and
Even
parties and
if
everything else again.
even if they did, consumers might not want to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
That's a good
so
point.
we didn't close until the state of Kansas told us we had to, but we had started offering digital services prior to then, like the week prior, because we saw this huge drop in attendance. Because to Dan's point, there were certain consumers that are just like, hey, I still don't want to go out. I still don't feel safe. Cool. And I think before we jumped on here, Eric, you mentioned something about you're back to working two jobs again, right? Like you're a digital producer and you're also an in-gym producer at the same time.
Right. You end up saying to yourself, how long can I last doing both? Obviously on the skeleton crew side, no funding. You got to, burn the candle on both ends. And then if you end up getting extra funding and you can support to bring folks back, hopefully you can continue as many services as possible for as long as possible.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, with that kind of in line, then I'm thinking I'm probably not going to juice the ads on in-gym people as much as I am on nutrition. That'll be a big push for ours. But then again, if a gym doesn't have nutrition, their road out of this, their sprint out of this turn, so to say, is going to look a little bit different. One thing that I think is universal to all gyms is going to be the need for follow-up with all those pauses, all those cancels, and then continuing the follow-up with the people who don't feel comfortable coming back into our gyms on a daily basis. They're still going to follow our YouTube workouts or whatever. Cool. They need to still stay on that consistent follow-up rhythm.
Going back to Dan's hairpin turn thing analogy metaphor, how do you, like, at what point do you decide you're still focusing on retention or are you focusing on growth? Because you're coming out of the corner with some gas. Is that gas on retention? Is that gas on growth? And is it reasonable to try to focus on growth right now?
It's both, or it's all. I mean, it's going to be a case by case. I mean, you're going to have a gym that lost 3%. They get to make 15 phone calls and focus on immediate recruitment. But then you got the flip side. You got a gym that loses 66 members. They're in recollection mode for until they can at least humanly touch base, authentically, human to human, coach to client before they start moving on growth.
Yeah, I think realistically, it should be both, like Eric's saying, and you should actually have a campaign for getting back your members that quit, trying to get referrals from members that are stuck, and trying to find, if you have the bandwidth to do it, trying to find more new members for your gym as well. But you should have a game plan for all of that, I think.
Yeah.
Zach.
And go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I was just going to say it's very rarely is it ever one or the other. It's like gyms should always be focusing on both at the same time. The question in my mind is, where is your focus? So what is your priority? And it seems to be being discussed. You're going to be doing both at the same time, but what your priority is going to be, where you put the majority of your energy and resources, is going to come down to your specific scenario, like Eric said, and actually like everybody's been saying. So I wouldn't want anybody listening to think like, oh, I'm going to do one or the other, because both need to be constantly happening. Yeah.
And one thing to think of, sorry, Nick, and then you can go, is you can delegate, right? So like if you have a coach that's a fan favorite or a coach that connects with a lot of members, have them try and recruit the members that quit that coach is a fan favorite of. Okay.
Yeah, so Dan's had this thing for a while now about gyms being more heavily focused on the marketing side than on the retention side. If this does nothing else for your business, but gets it through to your head that you should be focused weekly on talking to every single one of your members outside of the gym and hammering home retention, then if this doesn't get it, I don't know what else will. But if you're just now starting this is something that you should just keep doing, like for as long as you're a business owner.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. The other question I wanted to touch on, a topic I wanted to touch on is kind of like the doomsday scenario. When have you guys evaluated, and when is the end of the line? I mean, again, how long that takes, if it depends on your specific operation, funding, no funding, kind of your direction. But have you guys explored that as a possibility? Do you even know what that number is? Because I'm kind of on the firm believer, like if this is gonna, if staying in business and fighting for your business is going to bury you, you should probably be out. Like save your family, figure out another, maybe another job if that's even possible in this environment. But like at what point do you realize you need to cut bait? Or do you even have that number, whatever that figure is, whether it's dollar amount or number of members, whatever it is that something that gym owners are constantly keeping an eye on? Because I think that's really important too.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they should be. That kind of goes, again, using Dan's analogy here. When we saw the turn coming, it was immediately preparing to break. And how big is this turn going to be? And can we withstand this turn, or are we going to wipe out, right? And we discovered that it was about 46-ish members before we really shortened our run rate. So we've got, we started this whole pandemic with around 250-ish. Losing 46 members would start to cause us to have to really make some aggressive cuts from a staffing standpoint. So that kind of gave us, right? Like everyone's on a clock at this point. Yep. Every small business is on a clock. The cupcake shops, the theaters, they're all on a clock. And they've got the sooner that you can stop the clock and get business back to normal, the better, obviously, for each of these small businesses. And so, but everyone's clock is different, just like you said, right? Like if you're a gym that was already running on thin margins and your landlord's not working with you, man, your turn's got to be real freaking small because your clock is going real fast. Thankfully, ours is really big. We had a good amount of cash set aside. We've got a landlord that is working with us. And that's why the funding is so critical, because that just extends the clock, right? Slows everything down, makes it to where you can withstand a bigger turn.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, there's a ton more to unpack here. Let me wrap up for today, and we can follow up tomorrow on kind of what some of these other scenarios are in a little more detail. Awesome, guys. You guys have anything else to add today?
No, I would say the message that's been echoed by a bunch of the gym owners we've had conversations with is if you're struggling, ask for help.
Yep. And try and sit down, take the time you have right now and come up with a plan that's going to be your next 2 or 3 month roadmap. What Nick was saying, make that plan. If you applied for loans with and without loans coming in, I would say plan for the worst case and pray for the best or hope for the best. And then it'll be a pleasant surprise if you get a loan, but you're not mortgaging your whole future on getting it. And then in doing that plan, you can probably come up with a number or a scenario where you're like, once it hits this thing, this might be it for me, right? And hopefully we don't get to that point.
Yeah, for those of you guys watching, tuning in right now, jot down in the comments, what some of where your mind is right now and what those different scenarios are. We'd love to see what everyone else is doing and to kind of get a gauge of the thought process of different gym owners. How you guys are evaluating your own situation, and if you need any input. The Gym Survival Guide has been the group has been really pivotal in just sharing a bunch of information that helps gym owners kind of weather this. So you might have a unique situation, but I guarantee you someone else also has that same unique situation, right? So definitely share it. If you like this video, it was we brought some important topics to you guys. Make sure you subscribe to Goodstuff Daily or the Push Press channel. And we also have still a hotline, 833-GYM-WINS. Call in with your questions. We won't be able to take your calls, but we'll take your voicemails. We'll talk you through it on these calls and then in the forums as well. But otherwise, we will see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. All right? See you guys.